Chapter 1835. When the three beasts were looking around in amazement, the cultivators in the field also noticed the appearance of the three beasts, and their eyes were filled with surprise. The cultivators of the Zhanglan College are really amazing. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu both have contracted wind spirit tigers. Bailey Hongzhuang actually brought 3 contracted beasts today. This is too difficult to accept. Originally, in the eyes of many cultivators, the Zhanglan College was just a remote place. Most of the disciples of Tiangang Zone came from large dynasties, and there were almost no cultivators from small dynasties. However, the performance of Bailey Hongzhuang and her party was too special. Contract beasts were very rare, and ordinary people simply could not have a contract beast. However, when Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu each brought a wind spirit tiger to the field, everyone was already very surprised. Bailey Hongzhuang actually brought 3 contract beasts by herself today, which was really dumbfounding. I have seen these 3 contract beasts before in the shadow guard of the young master, He Mu. I did not expect them to come here with Bailey Hongzhuang today. Chapter 1836. Looking at the attitude of Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, Bailey Hongzhuang's brows wrinkled even tighter. Something must have happened, otherwise Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu would not be like this. Just what could have happened? The 3 beasts also noticed the attitude of Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing, and immediately sat beside Bailey Hongzhuang. Master, there must be something wrong between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. I feel that the 2 of them are not in the right state. Xiao He curled her lips. With Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's usual talkative character, they would talk for a long time when they saw them, but now the 2 of them did not react at all. This was the biggest problem. Because their performance was not like usual at all. Yes, there must be a problem, it's too strange. Xiao Bai nodded in agreement. Bai Shi lay on Bailey Hongzhuang's lap, his big round eyes flashing with a thoughtful light. I feel, the 2 of them seem to be sulking? Yes, they are sulking. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Bai Shi's little head. This time he was really right, it was indeed like this. Chapter 1837. After Bailey Hongzhuang began to cultivate, the 3 beasts also sat beside Bailey Hongzhuang and began to cultivate. They hadn't seen Xiao Feng and Xiao Hu for a while, but before they came, their master had told them that they couldn't be loud here, so they didn't dare to say anything else. Xiao Feng and Xiao Hu were undoubtedly very happy to see the appearance of the 3 beasts. They immediately went to the side of the 3 beasts and intimately arched their bodies. The 5 beasts were in a mess, but in the end they didn't dare to be too presumptuous and began to cultivate. While he was cultivating, time passed by extremely quickly. In the evening, Bailey Hongzhuang got up at this time as usual. She decided that she would have a good talk with Bai Junyu tonight. However, before that she had to talk to Di Baichen first. Otherwise, if she didn't go at this time, she was afraid that Di Baichen would come to find her later. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to greet Bai Junyu and say that she had something to talk to him about in the evening, Xia Jiqing also stood up. Boss, I'll go back with you. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and a surprised light appeared in her eyes. You want to go back to the house? These days, Xia Jiqing had always gone back to the house with Bai Junyu. Why did she suddenly want to go back with her today? It seemed that the conflict between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu was very serious this time. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. I've been cultivating for so long today, I want to go back and rest. Okay, then let's go together. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't object. Xia Jiqing was her good sister, so she naturally had to take care of Xia Jiqing's emotions. After Bai Junyu saw that Xia Jiqing was about to leave, his brows wrinkled, and his expression was a bit complicated. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly gave Bai Junyu a look. Xia Jiqing was no longer here, so Bai Junyu simply left with them. Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's meaningful glance, Bai Junyu also prepared to stand up. However, before Bai Junyu stood up, a figure had already appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing. Junior sister Bailey, junior sister Xia. Hearing this voice, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but turn around. They didn't know anyone else in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall other than their eldest senior brother. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw the appearance of the person behind her, she couldn't help but be surprised. Isn't this? Ji Wenshu smiled politely, but there was a hint of nervousness in his expression. I'm Ji Wenshu, please advise me. He originally planned to wait for Xia Jiqing to go back at night and then go back with her. However, he didn't expect Xia Jiqing to go back in the evening. Although he had a certain fear of Bailey Hongzhuang in his heart, he still came after thinking about it. He already knew that Xia Jiqing and Bailey Hongzhuang had a very good relationship. Since he wanted to pursue Xia Jiqing, then Bailey Hongzhuang would know sooner or later. As a result, there was no need to hide at all. On the contrary, being frank would give people a good impression. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Senior brother Ji, it's nice to meet you. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Ji Wenshu was also somewhat flattered. Chapter 1838. This feeling really made Ji Wenshu feel flattered. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's sincere smile in front of him, he suddenly felt that everyone's rumors about Bailey Hongzhuang were simply biased. Bailey Hongzhuang did not have the slightest bit of arrogance, nor did she seem like someone who specialized in seduction like everyone said. She looked like a lotus flower that was not stained by the mud. Every frown and smile revealed elegance and beauty. I'm also very happy to meet you, Ji Wenshu said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes looked back and forth between Ji Wenshu and Xia Jiqing for a moment. Ji Wenshu's feelings for Xia Jiqing had already been understood the last time. She suddenly understood why the atmosphere between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu had suddenly become so strange. She was afraid that it had something to do with Ji Wenshu. Bai Junyu was originally preparing to stand up, but the moment he saw Ji Wenshu appear, he sat back down again, closed his eyes and pretended to cultivate. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. The relationship between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu was really full of twists and turns. It really could not continue to be delayed. Junior sister Xia, I also want to go back to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Do you mind if I go back with you? Ji Wenshu smiled warmly and asked in a low voice. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing thought for a moment. She looked at Bai Junyu from the corner of her eyes, but saw that Bai Junyu had already entered a state of cultivation. Her heart was even more annoyed. Okay. Xia Jiqing's face was filled with a bright smile, and there was no reluctance in her expression. After seeing Xia Jiqing agree, Ji Wenshu was even more happy. That's great. Let's go. Xia Jiqing nodded and immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang together with Ji Wenshu in the direction of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The three beasts sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. They felt very helpless about the feelings in front of them. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu sulking each other was clearly letting others take advantage of them. It was simply infuriating. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two walked out of the cultivation field, Bai Junyu turned around and looked in the direction of Xia Jiqing's departure. His expression was gloomy. After Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the cultivation field for a distance, she said to Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu in front of her, I'm going to the young master's palace now, you can go back first. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly, okay. She naturally knew that the young master and the young master were lovers and had dinner every day. Ji Wenshu's heart was also happy. He was looking for an opportunity to learn more about Xia Jiqing. But because of Bailey Hongzhuang's presence, he couldn't say much. Now that Bailey he was more, he had no doubt that Xia Jiqing was a little more. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu. They were already very close to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. There should not be any problems, so she left with peace of mind. Master, this Ji Wenshu seems to be a good person. He should not be a bad guy. Xiaohei looked at Ji Wenshu's back and said, whether he is a bad guy or not is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu are a couple. Xiao Bai said helplessly. They could not let outsiders steal Bai Junyu's woman. Master will definitely find a way to help solve it. Bai Shi looked indifferent. With the relationship between Master and Xia Jiqing, he would never let this matter go. Chapter 1839. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang had already made up her mind, the three beasts no longer said anything. In fact, they felt that no matter how much conflict there was between Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, they were still an inseparable pair in the end. It was just that the temperaments of these two people were too special. As usual, Di Baichen was waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang to have dinner together, but today Bailey Hongzhuang came back a little later. The three beasts had already rushed towards the delicious food. Previously they were focused on Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu. Now that their attention had been diverted, they only felt hungry. Baichen, I may not be able to go to the desert world with you tonight to cultivate, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, Di Baichen raised his beautiful eyebrows and said, what's the matter? Jiqing and Junyu are in conflict again. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly, her delicate and perfect face showed a bit of helplessness. Di Baichen frowned. They have been cultivating in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for a while, but they still haven't expressed their feelings? Earlier, he had already learned about the things between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing from Bailey Hongzhuang's mouth. When he went to the Kanglin College to find Bailey Hongzhuang, he had already discovered that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing. However, at that time, Xia Jiqing did not show too much love for Bai Junyu. Some time ago he heard Hong Zhuang say that Xia Jiqing liked Bai Junyu. It was reasonable to say that these two people should be together naturally. How could it be delayed for so long and they still haven't been together? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It seems that they haven't been together yet. Then the two of them are really good at delaying. Bai Junyu is too timid in this kind of thing. Di Beichen's handsome and elegant face also showed a trace of helplessness. Men should take the initiative in this kind of thing. Maybe it's because he's been in love with Jiqing for so long that he's become timid. Sometimes when you like someone too much, your courage will become smaller and smaller, afraid that you will be rejected. Di Beichen shook his head. A man has to have courage. If a woman likes him, his confession will naturally succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. What if you don't like it? If he continues to chase after her shamelessly, he will definitely succeed. Di Beichen raised his fist confidently. The three beasties also looked at Di Beichen speechlessly. Speaking of which, when Di Beichen was pursuing Bailey Hongzhuang, he had really implemented this point perfectly. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so easy to gain his master's trust. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Di Beichen had already seen through this point, which was why he was pestering her to the extreme. Beichen, I'm very curious about a question. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen, her pretty face full of doubts. What question? How did you train your skin to be so thick? For a young sect master to be able to do this like Di Beichen, there should be very few existences. I was born with it. Di Beichen teased. Cough cough. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was drinking soup, choked after hearing Di Beichen's words. Chapter 1840. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes also changed a bit. As Di Beichen said, Di Beichen had never shown such a posture in front of others. Except in front of her. In fact, she felt that what Di Beichen said was right. As a man, he should take the initiative and be full of courage in this aspect. Women have always been passive in this aspect. Except for a few women who dared to take the initiative to confess, other women hoped that their beloved man would confess to them. Even women like Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman, who were proactive, did not take the initiative to speak in this matter. At this time, Bai Junyu needed to summon up his courage. I originally thought that after this period of time, they would slowly break through this layer of window paper. However, recently, a man who likes Jiqing appeared in the Vermilion Bird Palace, so there was a misunderstanding between them. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen and then said, I don't think it's a good idea for them to continue like this. It's better for me to talk to Junyu. As long as Junyu's feelings are confirmed, then this matter will have an answer. Hearing this, Di Beichen frowned slightly. You want to talk to Junyu alone? Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned and quickly said, Junyu is Jiqing's sweetheart, I'm just going to matchmake them. It's not convenient for a married woman to chat with other men in the middle of the night. Di Beichen's voice was gentle and overbearing, and his tone had already explained everything. Vinegar jar. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. She had never seen Di Beichen like this before. In this regard, Di Beichen did not care much but said sanctimoniously, Wife, it's better for them to deal with things between them. I feel that they can't handle this matter at all. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. If the problem between Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing could be solved by itself, then it would have been solved long ago. Now that there's another Ji Wenshu, I feel that this conflict will continue to expand. Both of them were taciturn when it came to such matters, and that Ji Wenshu seemed to be very proactive. If this continues, I'm afraid the situation will only get worse. She had already seen it today. In order to anger Bai Junyu, Xia Jiqing deliberately went back with Ji Wenshu. This was to give Ji Wenshu a chance to take advantage of this loophole. With Jiqing's feelings for Junyu, it was impossible for her to like someone else. If she continued like this, she would only hurt herself and delay Ji Wenshu. This Bai Junyu is really worrying. Di Beichen shook his head. He and Xiren were both very proactive people in their relationships. They had never seen someone like Bai Junyu who didn't dare to confess. Since that's the case, I'll go and have a chat with Bai Junyu tonight. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a hint of surprise. You're going to talk to Bai Junyu? Di Beichen nodded slightly. It's more convenient for a man to talk to another man. You can rest assured that I will achieve the effect you want. Looking at Di Beichen's confident appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. Then I'll give you this important task. No problem. Di Beichen laughed. Leave it to me. Chapter 1841. Wifey, I'll go talk to Junyu tonight and you can go talk to Jiqing. I hope they can talk to each other earlier so that they can be happy earlier. Di Beichen's face was filled with a handsome and warm smile. During this time he could see Bailey Hongzhuang every day and the two of them were together, which was a kind of happiness for him. When Bailey Hongzhuang was not around, he always felt that his heart was missing a piece. It was not until Bailey Hongzhuang came back that his heart was filled and his whole person was complete. As long as the two of them were together, it was a kind of happiness. He naturally hoped that Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing could talk about everything earlier and be together well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the smile on Di Beichen's face and couldn't help but be stunned. Di Beichen was a peerless beauty, and at this moment, seeing Di Beichen's smile, she only felt her heart beat. The Di Beichen in front of her was very different from the usual. It was an indescribable sense of satisfaction, but it was more charming. Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking at him in a daze, and the smile on his lips could not help but widen a little. It seems that wifey likes my face very much. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, not only your face, I like everything about you. Di Beichen's eyes became more and more gentle. The praise of others was nothing to him, only Bailey Hongzhuang's praise would make him happy. The three beasts were also very happy now. During this time they went to the desert world every night for 3 days to cultivate, and they recovered their strength during the day. Could be said that they were very tired. Today their master and Di Beichen were going to talk to Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu, so they could take advantage of this opportunity to have a good rest. When they participated in the assessment competition, although they were busy every day, they were not so tired. Compared to that, this was the real hardship. However, they also understood the reason why their master was working so hard, so they had no complaints. In their eyes, their master had never felt tired. On the contrary, he was very happy to enter the desert world to cultivate. Come to think of it, this was probably because Di Beichen was by master's side. The 3 light bulbs followed beside them, but they could feel their affection. It was so boring. After eating dinner, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen rested for a while before heading towards the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. The moonlight was bright and clean, covering the entire land like a thin veil, adding a hint of hazy beauty. Di Beichen held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked leisurely. Strolling in this environment was also a kind of enjoyment. Beichen, I really hope that we can be like this in the future, strolling under the moonlight, leisurely accompanying each other until we grow old. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head to look at the bright moon as a faint smile slowly appeared on her lips. Such beauty, such a scene, she couldn't help but think of the most beautiful fantasy in her heart. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen clasped Bailey Hongzhuang's small hand. Definitely. In the future, I will accompany you to do everything you want to do. The warm and magnetic voice was full of enchantment. Bailey Hongzhuang felt as if she had heard the most beautiful words in the world. She thought that love was like this, having a person willing to accompany you all your life. Di Beichen's mood was also very good. Now that Hongzhuang was by his side, he had no other requests. Chapter 1842. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall together, the eyes of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciples fell on Di Beichen. Greetings, young sect master. Greetings, young sect master. Along the way, all the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall disciples who saw Di Beichen would bow and greet him. Di Beichen nodded his head one by one. When the crowd saw that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a good relationship, they were somewhat envious. Flying to the branch to become a phoenix, this kind of thing was extremely difficult in itself, and there was the possibility of change at any time. However, now that more than 2 years had passed, the young sect master's feelings had not changed. From this, it could be seen how much the young sect master liked Bailey Hongzhuang. Therefore, they were now only envious of Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to make the young sect master like her for so long, and it was not entirely relying on her appearance. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were a pair of lovers in Tiangang sect, Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang did not need to hide their relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang led Di Beichen to her residence. After entering Bailey Hongzhuang's supplies, Di Beichen found that Bailey Hongzhuang had decorated the room very fresh and elegant. In his opinion, the area of the room was not large, but through Bailey Hongzhuang's decorations, he had a warm feeling. Sit for a while first. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. Later you will look for Bai Junyu first and then I will look for Jiqing? Di Beichen nodded. I'll ask Junyu to go outside and have a chat. It's not good for 2 men to talk in the house. As soon as he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh. It wasn't a big deal, but after listening to Di Beichen's words, she felt a little strange. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's smile, Di Baichen was also very happy. Now that he was with Hong Zhuang was smiling more and more. As long as Hong Zhuang was happy, it was a kind of satisfaction for him. A moment later, Di Baichen went to the next room to look for Bai Junyu. Young sect lord? Bai Junyu was obviously surprised to see Di Baichen appear. He never thought that Di Baichen would actually come looking for him. Di Baichen nodded slightly and said, "Let's go out and have a talk." Bai Junyu was a little puzzled at first, but he couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang and what happened today, and suddenly understood a little. His mood was very complicated now, but no matter what others said to him, it would be useless. However, since the young sect lord came looking for him, he naturally had to listen. Bai Junyu followed Di Baichen out of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Di Baichen didn't go far, and directly went to the back mountain of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall with Bai Junyu. "Young sect lord, what do you want to talk to me about?" Along the way, Di Baichen didn't speak. After stopping, Bai Junyu couldn't help but take the lead to speak. Di Baichen directly sat down on the grass, and at the same time took out 2 wine jugs from his Chenkuan bag. He handed one of them to Bai Junyu and said, "Sit." Looking at the wine, Bai Junyu couldn't help but smile, and immediately sat down with Di Baichen. Cheers. Di Baichen didn't go straight to the main topic. There were different ways for men to chat. After 3 rounds of wine, everything would be clear. On the contrary, if they started talking about this topic, Bai Junyu would probably feel very uncomfortable. Chapter 1843. Junyu, you like Xia Jiqing, right? While drinking, Di Baichen slowly said. However, his eyes were not looking at Bai Junyu, but at the bright moon in the sky. Listening to Di Baichen's words, Bai Junyu hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I like her. He liked Xia Jiqing from the first time he saw her more than 3 years ago. At that time, Xia Jiqing wanted to enter the special enrollment class, so he worked hard to ask the tutor to give Xia Jiqing a chance to be assessed. On the one hand, he hoped that Xia Jiqing could achieve her wish. On the other hand, he also hoped that he could be closer to Xia Jiqing. The final situation was as expected. He had always been in the same team with Xia Jiqing and could often see Xia Jiqing smile. However, the distance between them had never shrunk. At the beginning, he was very clear that Xia Jiqing did not like him at all. However, as the time they spent together grew longer, he sometimes had an illusion that Xia Jiqing liked him, but today it seemed that all this was just his imagination. Since you have liked her for so many years, why not express your feelings? Di Baichen looked at Bai Junyu. He really did not understand why Bai Junyu had not expressed his thoughts on this kind of thing. Hearing this, Bai Junyu's eyelids drooped slightly, his expression revealing an unspeakable bitterness. She doesn't like me. If I confess, I'm afraid she will have to avoid me in the future. With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Di Baichen could not help but think that Bai Junyu was stupid. They, as outsiders, had long understood the situation, but Bai Junyu still didn't understand it until now. After a long time, it turned out that Bai Junyu had always thought that Xia Jiqing did not like him. No wonder he did not dare to confess. Who said she doesn't like you? Di Baichen said. If she liked me, she wouldn't have left with another man today. Bai Junyu's lips pulled out a smile, but this smile always revealed a bit of sadness. Today the image of Xia Jiqing leaving with Ji Wenshu had been deeply imprinted in his mind. He always felt that in the future Xia Jiqing would be like today, leaving with a man and disappearing from his world forever. When he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel vexed. He really didn't want to see such a thing happen. He only felt an indescribable pain in his heart, making it difficult for him to breathe. Di Baichen sighed. He had seen people who were slow to love, but he had never seen someone so slow to love. Bai Junyu, are you stupid? Bai Junyu looked at Di Baichen doubtfully. He did not understand why Di Baichen suddenly said such words. We can all tell that Jiqing likes you. You're the one who's been making her wait. As a man, what are you afraid of? If you confess, maybe you'll succeed. At least Jiqing will know your feelings. If you don't confess, then you can only watch as Jiqing is taken away by another man. You don't even have the right to speak. In my opinion, you're not as good as Ji Wenshu who just appeared today. When Ji Wenshu first met Jiqing, he had already directly expressed his feelings. This is a real man. Bai Junyu listened to everything Di Baichen said, and his whole person was a little stunned. Chapter 1844. You and Jiqing have been together for so many years. No matter how you look at it, you have an advantage over Ji Wenshu. Ji Wenshu just appeared today and is still a stranger. Are you already discouraged and feel that you can't compare to him? Di Baichen frowned. If you really have no confidence in yourself, you might as well give up early. Jiqing is just a woman. If you don't take the initiative to express your feelings, do you want Jiqing to take the initiative to express her feelings to you? In the face of such a stupid Bai Junyu, Di Beichen was also helpless to the extreme. Originally, he thought that it was best for them not to intervene in other people's feelings. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was right. If they did not intervene in this matter, he was afraid that Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing would not be able to really be together. Di Beichen's words were like an alarm bell that woke Bai Junyu up. He looked at Di Beichen and felt that everything Di Beichen said was very correct. He had never thought about this problem before. He just analyzed Xia Jiqing's daily behavior to see if Xia Jiqing liked him or not. However, the answer he got in the end was that she did not like him. Perhaps he really should be brave enough to express his feelings to Xia Jiqing. No matter what the final result was, at least he would not let himself regret it. If Jiqing was chased by other men and he did not express his feelings from beginning to end, then he would definitely regret it in the future. He did not believe that he could not even compare to Ji Wenshu. No, I never felt that I was inferior to Ji Wenshu, Bai Junyu said resolutely. This was his dignity. For this new Ji Wenshu, he only felt that he was not worse than Ji Wenshu. Although Ji Wenshu's current strength was stronger than his, as long as he was given a certain amount of time, he would definitely become a better person than Ji Wenshu. The most important thing was that he had a heart that would always be good to Xia Jiqing. On this point, he believed that Ji Wenshu was absolutely incomparable to him. Ji Wenshu and Xia Jiqing had just met. At most, it could only be called good feelings and love. But he loved Xia Jiqing. The two were completely different. After hearing Bai Junyu's words, Di Beichen nodded. At least, Bai Junyu hadn't lost his fighting spirit as a man. For men, love was also a battlefield. They absolutely couldn't admit defeat before they put in the effort. In that case, you can compete fairly with Ji Wenshu. Ji Wenshu has already begun to move, yet you're still here feeling depressed. If you continue like this, you'll definitely lose, Di Beichen said slowly. He believed that as long as Bai Junyu was filled with confidence and fighting spirit, then the problem would not be far from being solved. Bai Junyu stared at Di Beichen and said, I understand. Di Beichen's words for him were like an epiphany. Originally he did not understand, but in an instant he understood everything. Even if his confession failed, he could still work hard. He believed that as long as Xia Jiqing saw his sincerity, she would definitely choose to agree with him. If he didn't work hard now, there would be nothing left. His mind kept replaying the scene of Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu leaving together. As he recalled those scenes, he felt an indescribable pain in his heart. Chapter 1845. Young Sect Master, thank you. Bai Junyu stood up and looked at Di Beichen gratefully. If it weren't for Di Beichen reminding him today, then he really didn't know when he would have understood this point. At that time, if Xia Jiqing really left with someone else, it was definitely something he couldn't bear. Now he decided to work hard. No matter what the final result was, he would work hard. Listening to Bai Junyu's words, Di Beichen knew that Bai Junyu really understood all this. This was undoubtedly an excellent result. This kid was not too stupid. I was also entrusted by others to do this. Originally, Hongzhuang was going to tell you, but I think it is more convenient for us men to talk about it, so I came. Hongzhuang is now talking to Jiqing, you should seize the opportunity. Di Beichen chuckled. He didn't tell Bai Junyu that Xia Jiqing also liked him. As long as Bai Junyu took the initiative to break this layer of window paper, then the two could be together. He felt that if he didn't tell Bai Junyu now, it would make this thing more interesting. After all, when the two of them were truly together, everything would be a beautiful memory. With Di Beichen's voice falling, Bai Junyu understood that Hongzhuang had been worried about their affairs. It's really shameful to say that from the beginning to the present, Hongzhuang has always been helping us. I didn't expect that now even this emotional thing needs Hongzhuang to worry about. Bai Junyu felt guilty. Along the way, Bailey Hongzhuang had helped him too much. If it weren't for Bailey Hongzhuang, he wouldn't be a member of Tiangang's sect now, nor would he be able to bring glory to his ancestors. If Bailey Hongzhuang had not appeared, then his life would have been completely different. It would have been impossible for him to be like this. He never thought that when it came to feelings, Bailey Hongzhuang had already seen it clearly, but he was still so weak. You and Jiqing are both good friends of ours. Naturally, we hope that both of you will have a happy ending. Di Beichen patted Bai Junyu's shoulder. He had said what he needed to say. What to do next would depend on Bai Junyu himself. If Bai Junyu still didn't know what to do at this point, then Bai Junyu would really be a fool. A smile appeared on Bai Junyu's face. To them, being able to meet Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen was their fortune. While Di Beichen and Bai Junyu were chatting, Bailey Hongzhuang also found Xia Jiqing. Knock knock. Bailey Hongzhuang knocked on the door of Xia Jiqing's room. When Xia Jiqing opened the door and saw Bailey Hongzhuang, her pretty face couldn't help but be surprised. "Boss, why did you come back so early today?" Usually, the boss stayed in the young palace master's palace and didn't come back so early. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face was filled with a touch of helplessness. "Aren't I worried about you and Junyu?" Xia Jiqing's face was gloomy in an instant and she said sullenly, "Between me and him, there is nothing to worry about." Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the room, and Xia Jiqing was still angry with Bai Junyu. Chapter 1846. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a smile as she teased Xia Jiqing. No matter how magnanimous and calm a woman was, once she was in love, she would become sensitive and stingy. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's teasing look, Xia Jiqing couldn't help but say angrily, "Boss, now that the situation has become like this, you are still in the mood to tease me." Her mood now could be described as extremely bad. When she thought of Bai Junyu's indifferent appearance, she couldn't help but feel angry and lost. She wanted to let it go, but after coming back she had been thinking about it and couldn't get rid of it. She wanted to meditate and cultivate, but she found that she couldn't calm down at all. Not to mention that she couldn't achieve any results in her cultivation, she might even go crazy. Therefore, in such a situation she could only be in a daze, which was really depressing. "Okay, I won't tease you anymore." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at her and said, "Why did you come back with Ji Wenshu today? How did you and Junyu get into a conflict?" Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and then opened her mouth. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been the most trusted person in Xia Jiqing. What's more, Bailey Hongzhuang had already known her thoughts, so there was no need to hide it. "Today, senior brother Ji came to greet me and said that he wanted to be friends with me." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and stared at Xia Jiqing, but there were already some guesses in her heart. "I know that senior brother Ji likes it, but in such a situation, Junyu didn't react at all as if he didn't care about it. He doesn't have me in his heart at all. Otherwise, he shouldn't have such an attitude when encountering such a thing." Xia Jiqing frowned. When she thought of the scene that happened during the day, her heart was blocked. Then what kind of reaction do you think Bai Junyu should have? Bailey Hongzhuang didn't answer immediately but asked. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing hesitated and said, At least you should show some reluctance." Bailey Hongzhuang faintly sighed. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were both extremely proud. They obviously cared about it, but on the surface they all pretended not to care. If Bai Junyu was really capable of that, then the two of you wouldn't have wasted so much time on each other. Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in confusion. She didn't understand what Bailey Hongzhuang meant. "Were you unhappy when you left with Ji Wenshu?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Xia Jiqing nodded her head. She was naturally not happy. Although Ji Wenshu should be a good person and a very charming man, she only had Bai Junyu in her heart. There was no room for anyone else. Therefore, no matter how outstanding Ji Wenshu was, it was meaningless to her. After all, once you like a person, you always think that he is the best no matter what. Seeing Xia Jiqing's answer, Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. "But I saw you and Ji Wenshu talking happily when you left together. I couldn't see any unhappiness at all." As soon as these words came out, Xia Jiqing was slightly stunned and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang stupidly. Chapter 1847. Bailey Hongzhuang could be sure that after Bai Junyu saw the scene of Xia Jiqing and Ji Wenshu leaving together, he was afraid that his heart was already depressed to the extreme. However, Bai Junyu was a person who cared about his face, so on the surface he was not willing to show it at all. Xia Jiqing seemed to suddenly understand. She had always looked at this matter from her own point of view, but had never looked at it from Bai Junyu's point of view. If she was Bai Junyu, presumably, she would do the same. Her heart, which was originally uncomfortable, seemed to be a lot more comfortable at this moment. Xia Jiqing only felt that the whole person's state was a bit better. "Boss, will it really be like this?" Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. In addition to this answer, there is no other answer. At this moment, Xia Jiqing's face that was previously full of worry finally showed a smile at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang patted Xia Jiqing's shoulder. "This kind of thing should be taken by the man. Jiqing, as long as you don't get entangled in this matter and feel better, it will be fine. I believe that it won't be long before Junyu starts to act." Recalling Di Beichen's confident promise to her before, he would definitely make Bai Junyu feel enlightened, so that his whole person would wake up. Di Baichen had never done anything wrong, and this time would not be an exception. As long as Bai Junyu had the courage, then all of this would not be a problem. Today she and Di Baichen were going out together. If Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were not together, then it would really be a waste of their painstaking efforts. With Bailey Hongzhuang's voice falling, Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang doubtfully. She always felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words had a deep meaning. "Boss, what do you mean by this?" Xia Jiqing couldn't help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "Nothing, you two have been entangled for so long, I also think it's time to solve this problem. Ji Wenshu's appearance is an opportunity. Unfortunately, Ji Wenshu is destined to have no hope." Xia Jiqing only thought that Bailey Hongzhuang meant that because of the appearance of Ji Wenshu, Bai Junyu would feel a little more nervous and didn't think much about it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Xia Jiqing chatted for a long time. All the unhappiness in Xia Jiqing's heart gradually dissipated in the conversation with Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, you're the best." Xia Jiqing's eyes were filled with warmth. "If it weren't for you, my state today would be terrible." No matter what, Boss would always think for her. There were many things that Big Boss could have ignored, but because of her, Big Boss kept helping. She couldn't express her gratitude to her boss with words. She could only repay him slowly with her entire life. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and shook her head. "We're good sisters. You're treating me like an outsider. Usually when I'm in a bad mood, you'll still accompany me. This is what you should do." Xia Jiqing was really her best sister. The two of them had known each other for such a long time. She was also grateful for Xia Jiqing's appearance. She was grateful that Xia Jiqing always supported her and believed in her no matter what. This feeling of being unconditionally trusted was really great. Chapter 1848. After Bailey Hongzhuang talked with Xia Jiqing for a while, she noticed Di Baichen's footsteps approaching. Now she was more and more familiar with Di Baichen. As long as she heard Di Baichen's footsteps, she could judge it. "Jiqing, you have a good rest, I'll go back first." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and said, "Okay boss, you also have a good rest." After being persuaded by her boss, she had come out of her bad mood and felt a lot better. When Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house, she saw that Di Baichen was already waiting for her. She chuckled and sat beside Di Baichen. "Is the effect achieved?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked with a smile. Di Baichen raised his eyebrows. "I personally did it, how can it not succeed? Don't worry, this problem will be solved in a few days." Looking at Di Baichen's confident smile, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile couldn't help but widen. Now, as she spent more time with Di Baichen, she found that Di Baichen was a very proud person. Of course, it was only in front of her. A few days later, when Bailey Hongzhuang went to the meditation field to practice, she saw that Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu had a very good relationship. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu suspiciously, but she couldn't help but smile. "You are..." Noticing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Xia Jiqing's expression changed slightly, but her cheeks couldn't help but blush. Bai Junyu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a silly smile. Everything was understood without words. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang had already understood. Di Baichen was right. If he said that there would be no problem, then there really would be no problem. "Since you have reconciled, I am happy for you." Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. Bai Junyu and Xia Jiqing were shy in this regard, so she no longer teased them. The two of them went in circles and waited for more than 3 years before they finally got together. This relationship was really hard to come by. However, with Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's slow reaction to feelings, there would not be any other problems in the future. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu's faces were full of smiles. In fact, they now felt like they were soaking in a honey pot, and their whole person was indescribably sweet. Ji Wenshu was very depressed. Originally, he only felt that his pursuit of Xia Jiqing was full of hope. He didn't think that before his actions were fully launched, Xia Jiqing had already been taken. This feeling undoubtedly made him very unhappy. However, at this time, even if he was unhappy, it was of no use. Time passed slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang practiced with Di Baichen in the desert world every night. Even practicing martial arts was practiced in the desert world, because this was the most time-saving way. However, in the eyes of other cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang was just practicing during the day and went back to the house to rest at night. It seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not the most hardworking among the disciples. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to the front of the ranking pillar. She successfully broke through to the second stage of the Green Realm last night. At this moment, she could also see her ranking. Chapter 1849. It was reasonable to say that if there was no breakthrough, the general cultivator would not come here to test the ranking. Only after a breakthrough would the cultivator's ranking have a greater improvement. Otherwise, the ranking increase would be extremely slow. If the ranking increase was pitiful or even there was no change, it would undoubtedly be a joke. In everyone's opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation time was still short. It was a bit too impatient to retest the ranking now. It is not an easy thing to increase the ranking. Bailey Hongzhuang did not break through at all. The increase in the ranking should be very small, right? I don't know what Bailey Hongzhuang is thinking. If it were me, I would not come to verify the ranking. Yes, even if she and the young lord are going to get married soon, at least she has to maintain her image. Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with doubts. They came earlier than Bailey Hongzhuang in the morning. They only saw Bailey Hongzhuang come to the arena and then went directly to the ranking pillar. Therefore, they did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang was thinking. Xia Jiqing frowned slightly and looked at Bai Junyu with doubts. Junyu, do you think the boss has broken through again? Others did not know the boss well, but she knew. The boss had never been a person who spoke without thinking. Since the boss chose to do this, then she must have her reasons. However, when she thought of this possibility, she felt that it was really too incredible. The boss was already at the first level of the Green Realm. As everyone knew, the more a cultivator cultivated, the more difficult it was to improve their cultivation. With Bailey Hongzhuang's current cultivation, it was undoubtedly extremely difficult to improve one level. Bai Junyu glanced at Xia Jiqing and his expression changed a bit. He pondered and said, maybe, it is really possible. After knowing each other for such a long time, all kinds of impossible things had happened to Bailey Hongzhuang. Although this matter was unbelievable, he still felt that this was the most likely. With Bai Junyu's voice falling, Xia Jiqing did not say much. Actually, her thoughts were the same as Bai Junyu's. She just felt that it was too unbelievable. During this period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang had not tested the changes in her strength. Her ranking had dropped from 300th to 350th. Just from the degree of change in this ranking, one could see the excellence of the Tiangang sect cultivators. In just 2 short months, there were already so many cultivators who had surpassed Bailey Hongzhuang in ranking. Soon Bailey Hongzhuang's test was over. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang's ranking began to change under the astonished gazes of the disciples. It rose rapidly from the 350th place to the 280th place. It seemed like she had only increased by 20 places compared to her original result of 300th place. However, in reality, Bailey Hongzhuang had surpassed 70 cultivators. Everyone clearly noticed the words Level 2 of the Green Realm written beside Bailey Hongzhuang's name. An indescribable shock and astonishment spread in the hearts of everyone. Oh my god, only a month has passed and Bailey Hongzhuang actually broke through to the 2nd level of the Green Realm? It is difficult to break through to the Green Realm. How did Bailey Hongzhuang do it? Chapter 1850. A puzzled gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang's body. Everyone really couldn't understand how Bailey Hongzhuang cultivated. It was clear that many cultivators spent more time in meditation than Bailey Hongzhuang, but their speed of improvement was not as fast as Bailey Hongzhuang. Could it be that the young sect master gave a lot of precious cultivation resources to Bailey Hongzhuang? At this time, everyone could only think of this possibility. In addition, they really couldn't figure out how Bailey Hongzhuang did it. Maybe with the young sect master's love for Bailey Hongzhuang, it is also very normal to do this. I really envy Bailey Hongzhuang. Usually, we only have so many cultivation resources. How can we compare with Bailey Hongzhuang? Everyone sighed faintly. They all envied the young sect master for having such a proud identity. Whether it was the successor of a sect or an aristocratic family, they didn't need to worry about cultivation resources at all. However, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have such an identity, but she could also have such cultivation resources. It was really too enviable. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced around and noticed everyone's envious and jealous eyes. She didn't care and walked to the position next to Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu and sat down. Boss, your cultivation speed is too heaven-defying. Xia Jiqing shook her head. She was almost used to all this, but every time such a thing happened, she still couldn't help but exclaim. Speaking of which, she and Bai Junyu had been cultivating day and night during this time, but their speed was still left behind by Bailey Hongzhuang. It was really infuriating. Bai Junyu didn't want to talk at the moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation speed couldn't be judged by common sense. At least, except for Bailey Hongzhuang, he had never seen anyone with such an amazing cultivation speed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. In fact, she had been cultivating for a long time, but she couldn't say it out loud. In a few days she would be going to Limitless Palace to cultivate. Before that, she hoped that she could improve her strength. Long ago, she had already heard from Di Baichen that her master was a peerless genius and extremely powerful. As her master's disciple, she naturally had to work harder. No matter what, she would not let anyone doubt her master's foresight. "Boss, these people are just sour grapes. You don't have to care about what they think." Xia Jiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. She knew how hard her boss had worked in order to be a match for Di Baichen. However, other people would always use other ways to interpret boss's efforts. Thinking about it, boss wouldn't feel good after hearing these words. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "It's all right. Don't worry about it." In fact, the reason why she could be promoted to Green Realm Level 2 in this short period of time was indeed with the help of cultivation resources. If her grandfather hadn't given her enough cultivation resources, it would have taken some time for her to break through. In such calm and comfortable days, 3 months slowly passed. On this day, Bailey Hongzhuang stood in front of Di Baichen. "Baichen, 3 months have passed. It's time for me to go to Limitless Palace," Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Chapter 1851. I'll send you to Limitless Palace. Di Baichen naturally knew about this matter. He believed that Limitless Palace Master would definitely teach Hongzhuang a lot of useful things. Limitless Palace Master and Hongzhuang were both cultivators of the Lan family. Presumably, Limitless Palace Master would have a better understanding of the Rainbow Pearl. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and said, "You have a lot of things to deal with in Tiangang sect. Now, Master won't appear for most of the things. Isn't it bad for you to leave like this? You've already brought me to Limitless Palace last time. I know how to get there." Di Baichen smiled slightly. He reached out and touched Bailey Hongzhuang's silky black hair. His eyes were filled with pampering light. "You know how much Master values you. If I don't send you there, Master won't be at ease." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows slightly. Her eyes were filled with a hint of surprise. "I've already told Master yesterday. Master asked me to send you there. Tiangang sect hasn't had any problems recently. All the elders are in good order. You can rest assured." Bailey Hongzhuang raised her head and saw Di Baichen's smile that was brighter than the sun. Her beautiful face also bloomed with a smile. "Then let's set off together." This feeling of having Di Baichen by her side at all times was really great. After the two of them made their decision, they immediately led the three beasts towards the direction of Limitless Palace. Qin Ai already knew that Bailey Hongzhuang would leave after cultivating in Vermilion Bird Palace Hall for 3 months. Therefore she didn't need to say anything. When the three beasts left, they were somewhat reluctant to part with He Mu. After all, Master and Di Baichen were too crazy when cultivating. He Mu was the easiest to bully. Seeing the three beasts relying on He Mu, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and decided to call He Mu along. After all, she would have to learn from her master and mistress when the time came, and she might not be able to take good care of the beasts. With Darkwood around, there was no need to worry. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on He Mu's shoulders. As Baisher grew bigger, he could no longer be held in his arms. In a short span of 3 months, Tiangang sect's food was excellent, and the supply of demon crystals had never been cut off. Therefore, Baisher's body was now as big as a golden retriever. However, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at White Lion, who was growing bigger and bigger. She felt that White Lion was not far from becoming her mount. This was because White Lion's body had been growing rapidly ever since then. Compared to its furry and extremely cute appearance in the past, the current White Lion had an additional majestic aura. The White Lion, which was entirely white, looked very beautiful. It gradually lost its previous chubby figure and became strong and mighty. Especially that pair of sharp and threatening eyes, no one dared to underestimate them. Similarly, as its body grew bigger, White Lion could eat more and more. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen did not go to Limitless Palace with the mentality of sightseeing. Instead, they rushed there as fast as they could. Because there was no news from Shirtian Pavilion for a long time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's feelings became more and more complicated. They had already made a decision. If there was still no news after a while, they could only go to Yu Clan and turn it upside down. Chapter 1852. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen arrived at Limitless Palace, the disciples guarding the mountain immediately let them in after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Obviously, before Bailey Hongzhuang arrived, Yu Linfeng had already informed them. After arriving at Limitless Palace, the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen undoubtedly attracted the astonished gaze of the disciples of Limitless Palace. 5 months ago, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen appeared, they already felt that it was very strange. They never thought that they would actually come again today. They really didn't understand why they were here. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen immediately walked in the direction of Yu Linfeng's palace. Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu also received the news that Bailey Hongzhuang had arrived at Limitless Palace. They immediately prepared to go out and welcome her. However, just as the two of them walked out of the palace, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen coming towards them. "Greetings to Master's wife." Bailey Hongzhuang respectfully bowed. "Greetings to Palace Master Yu, Palace Master's wife." Di Beichen also bowed. Yu Linfeng smiled slightly. Nangong Wu took the initiative to help Bailey Hongzhuang up and said, "We're all family. There's no need to be so polite. You guys are very punctual." Yu Linfeng chuckled. "Disciple will naturally abide by Master's instructions." Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a faint smile. When facing Yu Linfeng, she didn't feel nervous at all. On the contrary, she was very relaxed. This was because Yu Linfeng was not only her master, but also her kind elder. Yu Linfeng nodded. His gaze then fell on Di Beichen and said, "Young sect master Di, in these 3 months, are you going to stay in Limitless Palace or go back?" He had already expected that Di Beichen would send Bailey Hongzhuang over. However, after seeing that the relationship between Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang was so good, he felt very happy. "Since young sect master Di is already here, let's stay here together. This way Hongzhuang won't be lonely here." Nangong Wu smiled and said. She knew that it was inappropriate to separate lovers. Moreover, the distance between Limitless Palace and Tiangang's sect wasn't far. Di Beichen staying here wasn't a problem. There wasn't any problem with Di Beichen staying here. There wouldn't be any problem with staying here. If Tiangang's sect had something that required Di Beichen to go back, Di Beichen could also return quickly. Yu Linfeng didn't say much. He just looked at Di Beichen. No matter if Di Beichen stayed here or not, it wouldn't be a problem. Di Beichen thought for a moment. Looking at Nangong Wu's enthusiastic look, he smiled and said, "If the two of you don't mind, then I will stay in Limitless Palace." "I don't mind." Nangong Wu waved her hand. She was very satisfied with Di Beichen. She believed that with Di Beichen staying in Limitless Palace, Bailey Hongzhuang would be more at ease. In fact, Di Beichen originally hoped to stay in Limitless Palace to accompany Bailey Hongzhuang. Now that Nangong Wu urged him to stay, he naturally went with the flow. He was extremely happy in his heart. "You just rushed here today. We have already prepared a place for you to stay. You can stay there for the next few days. Tomorrow Hongzhuang will come and cultivate with me," Yu Linfeng said slowly. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and replied respectfully, "Yes, master." Compared to Yu Linfeng's majesty, Nangong Wu was much more enthusiastic. Chapter 1853. Under the lead of Nangong Wu and Yu Linfeng, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen arrived at the residence that they had prepared for them. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen saw the residence, they couldn't help but be surprised. In front of them was a red palace. It was bright but not tacky. It was elegant and flamboyant. At first glance, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that she liked it very much. However, this bedroom was almost the same size as Di Beichen's bedroom. In the territory of Limitless Palace, there was actually no one living in this kind of bedroom. "Mistress, I wonder who is living in this bedroom? Will Beichen and I disturb her if we stay here?" Bailey Hongzhuang was a little worried. No matter who it was, if two strangers lived in their palace, it would be very inconvenient. Moreover, to be able to have such a big bedroom in Limitless Palace, her identity must not be simple. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Nangong Wu couldn't help but laugh. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu in confusion. She didn't understand why Nangong Wu suddenly laughed so happily. There wasn't anything wrong with her words. Nangong Wu looked at Yu Linfeng and laughed. Now, she only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was extraordinarily cute. When Di Beichen saw Nangong Wu laughing, his deep eyes gradually became clear. It was obvious that he understood a little. "Mistress, what are you laughing at?" Seeing Nangong Wu laughing so happily, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but ask. Hongzhuang, this is the bedroom we specially prepared for you." As soon as these words were spoken, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, and her clear eyes were filled with a wisp of surprise. "My bedroom?" Nangong Wu nodded. "That's right. In the future you will be the successor of Limitless Palace. Naturally you will have your own palace. During this period of time, you will not be in Limitless Palace. Therefore, I will be in charge of decorating this bedroom. Take a look and see if you like it. If there's anything you don't like, we can change it when the time comes. When Yu Linfeng was preparing for an ordinary successor, the South apartment and Yu Linfeng had planned to build a palace for him. However, they didn't know whether the successor they were looking for was a man or a woman, so they couldn't make a move. After meeting Bailey Hongzhuang in person, Nangong Wu arranged for people to start the construction in full swing. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with a touch of emotion. She never thought that her master and mistress would build a palace for her. Di Beichen's gaze also changed a little. It seemed that Palace Master Yu and Mistress Yu really liked Hongzhuang. Logically speaking, even if they had chosen the successor, they would pay more attention during the training process. If there was anything they were dissatisfied with, as long as the sect wasn't handed over to Hongzhuang, then everything would be fine. However, Palace Master Yu and Mistress Yu's actions had undoubtedly confirmed all of this. Thinking of this, Di Beichen felt happy for Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, to be able to make Palace Master Yu accept her so thoroughly, this was also Bailey Hongzhuang's incredible. Thank you, Master Mistress. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed deeply. That light and melodious voice was now a little hoarse. Ever since she transmigrated to the present, her master and mistress were undoubtedly the elders who treated her extremely well. Chapter 1854. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu's expression changed a little. When they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang again, their eyes were filled with love. The more they looked at this disciple, the more satisfied they were. Although they had not started to teach Bailey Hongzhuang cultivation, they had already taken a good look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Nangong Wu patted Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder, her bright and flamboyant face was full of smiles. Come, let's go in and see if you like this arrangement. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled, her smile was sweet and moving. I'll definitely like it if it's prepared by Master's wife. Hearing this, Nangong Wu's smile widened a little. She immediately pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and walked into the bedroom. Yu Linfeng and Di Beichen followed closely behind. He Mu brought the three beasts and walked at the back. Palace Master Yu is really good to Master. She actually prepared such a bedroom for Master. It's really a surprise. Xiao He could not help but sigh. Previously they felt that Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were very good people and treated Master very well. Now it seemed that they treated Master extraordinarily well. In that case, will we have our own house in the future? Baisher's eyes lit up. They had always stayed in the same house with Master. This was because their master had always lived in only one room. When they were in the Tiangang sect, they either stayed with their master or stayed with He Mu. They had never had their own room. This bedroom was so big they could have their own living quarters. That's a good idea. Xiaobai was also very happy. Master now had such a big bedroom. Thinking about it, Palace Master and Palace Master's wife did this to let Master truly treat this place as her home. With her own living quarters, Master would naturally have a sense of belonging. This way, Master won't feel like an outsider in Limitless Palace in the future. Thinking of this, they had a good impression of the Palace Master and his wife. Bailey Hongzhuang was led by Nangong Wu to visit every part of the palace. Bailey Hongzhuang also found that Nangong Wu had arranged everything for her very carefully. She liked it very much. Hongzhuang, what do you think of this place? A smile bloomed on Nangong Wu's face. She was full of confidence in her arrangements. Long ago, she had hoped that she could have a younger sister. That way she could arrange everything for her younger sister. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was her junior and not her younger sister, Bailey Hongzhuang was the same to her. During this period of time, she had put a lot of effort into decorating this bedroom, and she felt extremely happy. The entire bedroom was mainly red. With one look, one could tell that this was a woman's bedroom. However, when Nangong Wu first met Bailey Hongzhuang, she understood that Bailey Hongzhuang liked the simple and generous feeling. Therefore, when she was decorating the bedroom, she paid more attention. The bedroom in front of her was bright but not gaudy. It was graceful but not lacking in generosity. It was a combination of two styles. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's current identity was the young palace master of Limitless Palace. Her bedroom couldn't be too simple. As long as it was the palace master or the young palace master, their bedroom would inevitably be more luxurious. Chapter 1855. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the bedchamber in front of her. She really couldn't find a single thing that she was dissatisfied with. She was really satisfied. No matter if it was the layout or the layout, she couldn't find fault with it. She just felt that it was really great. Mistress, your layout is really great. I really like it. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a bright smile. Nangong Wu seemed to have understood her taste to the extreme. She liked all the decorations. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the smile on Nangong Wu's face became even brighter. It's good that you like it. Then I can rest assured. I like it so much. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was filled with gratitude. On one hand, it was because Master and Mistress had prepared a bedchamber for her. On the other hand, it was because Master's wife had arranged everything according to her preferences. Di Beichen couldn't help but praise after noticing the layout of the bedchamber. He and Hongzhuang had been together for so long. Naturally, he had a certain understanding of Hongzhuang's preferences. Obviously, the layout of the bedchamber was extremely compatible with Hongzhuang's preferences. She couldn't help but admire Nangong Wu. Nangong Wu had only met Hongzhuang once, but she knew Hongzhuang's habits so well. It was really amazing. Your master's wife has always been very good at decorating and understanding people's preferences. She spent a lot of effort to prepare and decorate this bedchamber. She's the happiest that you like it. Yu Linfeng's face was filled with a gentle and elegant smile. He was also very clear about Nangong Wu's preferences. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Nangong Wu in amazement. Mistress, you're really amazing. Being able to determine her preferences after only meeting her once, this was really not an ability that ordinary people could have. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's amazed and admiring look, Nangong Wu waved her hand. This is my hobby. It's normal that I'm good at it. Basically, I've prepared everything that needs to be prepared. If you lack anything, just tell me. I'll help you prepare it, Nangong Wu said with a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everything around her and said, Master's wife, you have already prepared everything for me. Why would I need anything else? All this time, the living conditions she lived in were ordinary. Back when she was in the general's residence, she lived in a dilapidated courtyard. When he arrived at the Azure Water School and lived in the special enrollment dormitory, the environment was undoubtedly a lot better, but the range was still not big enough. As for the competition, there was no need to talk about the living conditions. They had to make do with it. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang had long been used to all this and did not have too many requirements for the living conditions. The best living conditions belonged to the Tiangang sect. The Vermilion Bird Palace Hall's residence was a lot more spacious, and Di Beichen's palace was also very comfortable to live in. However, for the current her, she did not have the time or opportunity to enjoy it. She was wholeheartedly focused on improving her cultivation. Therefore, when she lived in Di Beichen's palace, they basically did not have much rest and had been cultivating in the desert world. Now that she saw this palace that belonged to her, her heart was filled with joy and happiness. Nangong Wu smiled faintly. Then you should rest well here today. You'll have to start cultivating tomorrow. You should be mentally prepared. Chapter 1856. After Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu left, the three beasties ran to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Master, which room are we staying in? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the three excited beasties and couldn't help but smile. You can choose whichever room you want. The three beasties couldn't help but jump when they heard this. Master is the best. After receiving the order, Di Beichen gave He Mu a look and He Mu immediately brought the three beasties to find their room. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen went to the main bedroom that Nangong Wu had specially prepared for them. Looking at everything that was arranged in the room, Bailey Hongzhuang's smile was warm and bright. Master and Mistress are really good to me. They actually prepared all of this. Bailey Hongzhuang walked to the side and sat down. She supported her head with one hand and stared at Di Beichen. Master and Mistress had always treated her so well and she felt that there was nothing she could do to repay them. I am only able to stay here because of my wife. Di Beichen's face was full of smiles and there was a hint of ridicule in his expression. However, his words were still filled with happiness for Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Di Beichen and said, In that case, I have to thank you for letting me stay in your bedroom in Tiangang sect. Di Beichen chuckled, Same to you. They had rushed here at top speed and were a little tired. So, they immediately rested in the palace. From Nangong Wu's words, Bailey Hongzhuang knew that tomorrow's cultivation would not be simple. She had to recharge her energy today so that she would have the energy to face master's training tomorrow. Bailey Hongzhuang was already mentally prepared. After all, she also suffered a lot when she was cultivating in her previous life. That night, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen did not cultivate nor did they go to the desert world. They just slept in the room. After not sleeping for a long time, they felt more energetic after a good sleep. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang got up as soon as the sun rose. After quickly washing up, Bailey Hongzhuang prepared to report to the palace master's bedroom. "Wife, work hard on your cultivation. I will wait for you in the bedroom." Di Beichen smiled and cheered Bailey Hongzhuang on. After knowing Hongzhuang's past, he knew that Hongzhuang must have seen a lot of the world. However, when he faced Hongzhuang, he could not help but worry about her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. "Okay, then I will go first." Just when Bailey Hongzhuang turned around and was about to leave, Di Beichen suddenly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and pulled her whole body back. Suddenly, a force came from her arm. Bailey Hongzhuang's body was pushed back and fell into Di Beichen's gorgeous arms. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in his arms. He lowered his head and left a kiss on her forehead. Then he said, "Go." A warm touch came from her forehead. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that her heart had turned into a feather, floating in the air. "I am leaving." Bailey Hongzhuang followed the path she took yesterday and walked towards the palace master's bedroom. Fortunately, this area was obviously a place where the disciples of Limitless Palace would not set foot in. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang did not meet any disciples of Limitless Palace along the way. Chapter 1857. Master, disciple requests to see you. Outside the bedroom, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice sounded. As soon as her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang saw Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu walking out of the room. Obviously, they had already noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's arrival. "Hongzhuang, you're here." Nangong Wu's face bloomed with a warm smile as usual. To her, there was usually only her and Yu Linfeng here. She didn't even have anyone to talk to. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance was simply something she wished for. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly and bowed. "Greetings, master and mistress." Yu Linfeng saw Bailey Hongzhuang's energetic appearance, and his eyes were filled with a touch of satisfaction. Cultivators should be full of energy when cultivating. On the contrary, those cultivators who suffered a little and complained were destined to not be able to walk on this path for long. The more outstanding the cultivator, the smaller the possibility of these problems existing. "Since you're ready, then follow me to the training field now." Yu Linfeng went straight to the point. He understood Bailey Hongzhuang's current situation very well. Time was undoubtedly the most precious. He knew that his disciple understood everything. Therefore, even if she suffered a little, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely be able to bear it. "Yes." Bailey Hongzhuang quickly responded. Yu Linfeng took the lead and walked towards the training field. Nangong Wu accompanied Bailey Hongzhuang at the back. "Hongzhuang, don't be fooled by your master's usual gentle appearance. Once he starts cultivating, he's extremely terrifying. This cultivation process will definitely be very tiring, but the rewards will also be great. I hope you can persevere." Nangong Wu's expression revealed a bit of worry. The reason why Yu Linfeng was able to obtain achievements that others couldn't at such a young age was because his cultivation intensity was definitely not comparable to ordinary people. Behind everyone's envy, there were countless sorrows and hardships. She watched as Yu Linfeng improved himself in such a crazy cultivation. She resisted the heartache until now. However, such a serious Yu Linfeng also had a kind of charm that could enchant people. To become Yu Linfeng's disciple, there must be a certain price to pay. The amount of effort would be several times that of other cultivators. Bailey Hongzhuang was just a girl. She didn't know if Bailey Hongzhuang could bear all this. Feeling Nangong Wu's worry, Nangong Wu's face was filled with a faint smile. "Mistress, don't worry. No matter how hard it is, I will definitely persevere." Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes flickered with a deep and determined light. She was never afraid of how difficult the process would be. She was only afraid that her efforts would be of no use. Since it was a cultivation that was useful to her, no matter how difficult the process was, she would persevere with her own beliefs. Nangong Wu saw Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes overflowing with color at a glance. The determination that flickered in them shocked her. Bailey Hongzhuang had suffered too much over the years. That was why she had such a determined look in her eyes. Only by enduring the most bitter of hardships can one rise above others. This sentence had always been extremely accurate. If one hadn't endured extreme pain, how could one have such determination? Chapter 1858. Compared to Nangong Wu's worries, Yu Linfeng was very calm. Bailey Hongzhuang could even endure the pain of merging with the Rainbow Pearl. She would definitely be able to endure the hardships of cultivation. Back in the ruins, he had already seen Bailey Hongzhuang's firm determination. Thinking about it, when faced with such a background, there would only be two ways for a cultivator to react. First, she would completely break down and never be able to recover. Second, she would become stronger. She would be able to endure all the pain and setbacks. Because even such a blood feud could not defeat her, other things would naturally not be able to defeat her. Therefore he was very confident in Bailey Hongzhuang. As they walked forward, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that Yu Linfeng and Nangong Wu were bringing her to a very secretive place. However, when they arrived at their destination, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that there were other cultivators there. These cultivators were all wearing the disciple uniform of Limitless Palace. Bailey Hongzhuang recognized them at a glance. They were definitely disciples of Limitless Palace. When the disciples of Limitless Palace saw the sect master and Madam Sect Master personally coming here, their eyes were filled with surprise. Greetings to Sect Master and Madam Sect Master. Everyone bowed respectfully, but in their hearts, they were somewhat flattered. Usually, the Sect Master and Madam Sect Master rarely came here. Even for them, it was extremely difficult to meet the Sect Master and Madam Sect Master. However, when everyone's gaze landed on Bailey Hongzhuang, they could not help but be puzzled. Who is this lady? She can actually make the Sect Master and Madam Sect Master bring her here. It seems like her background is not weak. I have never seen this lady before. However, she is very beautiful. The Sect Master and Madam Sect Master specially brought her here. Could it be that they want her to cultivate? Everyone was discussing. They were filled with curiosity about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. They had never seen such a young person with such great reputation. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw these cultivators, her eyes were also filled with surprise. She had never thought that there would be other cultivators here. This was undoubtedly beyond her expectations. These cultivators were obviously different from the cultivators she had seen outside. She wondered what these cultivators did. They are the core disciples of Limitless Palace. Their strength is much stronger than the other disciples. Their cultivation method is also different. You can train with them for the time being. Come find me when you're done with your training in Wind Canyon. Yu Linfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. At the moment, he didn't have a good understanding of Bailey Hongzhuang's strength. She had to pass the training first. Cultivation was also a gradual process. If one was too impatient, there would be no benefits. After listening to Yu Linfeng's words, Bailey Hongzhuang finally understood that these people were the core disciples of Limitless Palace. It was said that every sect's core disciple was an extremely important force. They were also cultivators that the sect focused on nurturing. However, to become a core disciple of a sect was not an easy task. This required one to be selected step by step from many disciples. After passing through layers of tests, they had to prove their talent, potential, and hard work before they could succeed. Chapter 1859. Yes. Bailey Hongzhuang replied. She understood that her master must have her own considerations. She would not have any objections. As long as it was a task assigned to her by her master, she would definitely complete it well. With the strength of Wuji Palace, the strength of its core disciples would definitely not be weak. The process of cultivation would naturally not be simple. In comparison, her strength was probably not as good as these core disciples. Therefore, it would not be easy to complete this task. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have any objections, Yu Linfeng nodded his head. All along he had admired Bailey Hongzhuang's personality. No matter what she did, she would not ask too many questions. Many times, actions were more important than words. Previously, when he was thinking about how to improve Bailey Hongzhuang's strength, he had thought of many methods. However, improving cultivation was only one aspect. How to unleash one's combat power was also a matter of consideration. Therefore, it was necessary to improve one's qualities in other aspects. Only when a cultivator's speed, agility, and strength were improved, could they unleash their strongest strength. Otherwise, the cultivation would only become more and more unbalanced. Nangong Wu nodded her head slightly. Originally, she was a little worried that Yu Linfeng would let Bailey Hongzhuang undergo some horrifying methods. In comparison, cultivating in Wind Canyon was undoubtedly gentler. If the core disciples of Wuji Palace knew what Nangong Wu was thinking at this moment, they would definitely be speechless. The cultivation in Wind Canyon was already very abnormal for them. After cultivating for a period of time, they were still unable to persist for a long time. However, in the eyes of the Madam Sect Master, this was actually a very gentle cultivation method? If this was gentle, then what kind of cultivation method was not gentle? Elder Qi. Yu Linfeng waved his hand and a man of about 50 years old walked over from behind. After seeing the Sect Master and Madam Sect Master here, Qi Heshuan's face could not help but be filled with surprise. He quickly bowed and said, "Greetings to Sect Master and Madam Sect Master." Yu Linfeng raised his right hand slightly, indicating for Su Heshuan to stand up. Only then did Su Heshuan stand up. The surprise and doubt in his eyes had yet to dissipate. Normally, the Sect Master and Madam Sect Master would never come here. What was going on today? Elder Su, Bailey Hongzhuang will be training with you in Wind Canyon these days. Can you give her some pointers? Yu Linfeng said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang was his disciple, but he did not want to give her special treatment in this kind of ordinary cultivation. Only with a strong enough foundation would there be unlimited possibilities in the future. From Yu Linfeng's point of view, this was not giving Bailey Hongzhuang any preferential treatment. But in the eyes of the disciples, this was simply taking care of her. The sect master had personally brought Bailey Hongzhuang here and instructed the elders to teach her well. This made them even more curious about what kind of person this Bailey Hongzhuang was. Su Heshuan quickly nodded and replied respectfully, "Don't worry, sect master. I will definitely teach Miss Bailey well." Seeing this, Yu Linfeng's eyes flashed with satisfaction. Now the first stage was handed over to Su Heshuan. He only needed to pay attention to Bailey Hongzhuang's performance and results. Then everyone cultivate well. After leaving this sentence, Yu Linfeng left with Nangong Wu. Chapter 1860. Greetings to Elder Su. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed to Elder Su. Her expression was humble and respectful. Currently she did not know how to train in Wind Canyon. She could only listen to Elder Su's introduction. Su Heshuan had many guesses about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity. He did not know what background Bailey Hongzhuang had. However, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's humble and courteous appearance, he had a better impression of her. Any cultivator with a slightly higher status would usually think highly of themselves. This kind of person was the most troublesome. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang was not such a troublesome existence. Let me introduce you to Wind Canyon. Su Heshuan took the lead and walked towards the direction of Wind Canyon. Bailey Hongzhuang followed closely behind. This is Wind Canyon. There are strong winds all year round. Moreover, these winds are different from ordinary winds. When these winds blow onto a cultivator's body, the yuan power in the cultivator's body will constantly decrease. However, after cultivating here for a long time, the cultivator's recovery speed of yuan power will be much faster than ordinary cultivators. Moreover, there are strong gales here. It is very effective for cultivators to cultivate their movement skills here. Not only that, when the yuan power in the body is exhausted, the speed of cultivation will be much faster. Listening to Su Heshuan's introduction, Bailey Hongzhuang had a certain understanding of Wind Canyon. This was the first time she had heard of such a magical place. She did not know what kind of wind would have such a special effect. Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to see for herself. Under Su Heshuan's lead, Bailey Hongzhuang finally arrived at Wind Canyon. She saw the true appearance of Wind Canyon. This was a huge canyon. The mountains on both sides were extremely close. There was only a passage in the middle that allowed a few people to pass through. Moreover, there were gales blowing out from the inside. It was very magical. Bailey Hongzhuang took a look and saw that there were several figures in Wind Canyon. Obviously, they were the core disciples of Limitless Palace. They were cultivating in Wind Canyon. This is the Wind Canyon, Su Heshuan said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her eyes were fixed on the Wind Canyon. Because the passage was very narrow and sunlight could not reach the Wind Canyon, the entire Wind Canyon was very dark. The closer we get to the Wind Canyon, the stronger the hurricane becomes, and the shorter the duration it lasts. When you reach the place marked by the red line and stay there for a full 4 hours, it will prove that you have passed the test of the Wind Canyon. Hearing Su Heshuan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang looked down into the depths of Wind Canyon. Sure enough, there was a red line there and many core disciples were in front of that red line. Obviously, they could not successfully stay at the red line. You can cultivate here first. If there's anything you don't understand, you can come and ask me, Su Heshuan said slowly. Thank you, Elder Su, Bailey Hongzhuang bowed again. Su Heshuan nodded slightly. He was quite satisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude. However, before he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, he would not show any attitude. After Su Heshuan left, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Wind Canyon. She was very curious. What kind of hurricane was it? She also wanted to experience it. Chapter 1861. She never thought that this wind canyon would also have the effect of training her elemental energy. She wanted to know what kind of improvement she would get if she trained here. The surrounding core disciples kept sizing up Bailey Hongzhuang. Their hearts were vaguely filled with envy and jealousy. I wonder who this girl is. Even Elder Su treats her exceptionally well. A girl lamented. As everyone knew, Elder Su had always been a very serious person. He rarely gave people a good face. In comparison, Elder Su's attitude towards Bailey Hongzhuang was much better than his attitude towards them. Who asked us to not have a background like her? Another girl spoke out. Right now we don't know anything. Let's see how she performs in the Wind Canyon. If she doesn't have strength, even if her status is extraordinary, it still won't be of any use. Everyone nodded their heads. As core disciples of Limitless Palace, they had all gone through countless hardships to obtain their current status and treatment. Now that a groundless girl had suddenly appeared and was able to enjoy the same treatment as them as core disciples, their hearts would naturally be filled with dissatisfaction. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that many gazes were focused on her. Although she didn't know what those cultivators were talking about, she could roughly guess what they were talking about. If it was anyone else, after seeing their hard work, the fruits of their hard work being so easily obtained by someone else, they would definitely feel unbalanced in their heart. However, these weren't within the scope of her concern. Because as long as she displayed her strength, all the doubtful remarks would dissipate. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang directly walked into the Wind Canyon. When Bailey Hongzhuang approached the Wind Canyon, she felt some hurricanes blowing towards her body. However, her position was a certain distance away from the Wind Canyon. So when these hurricanes blew on her body, it didn't affect her too much. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked towards the Wind Canyon. The closer she got to the Wind Canyon, the stronger the hurricanes became. After carefully sensing for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the elemental energy in her body was indeed constantly decreasing. This hurricane can really dissipate the elemental energy in a person's body. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with amazement. It was her first time seeing such a mysterious hurricane. There's actually such a mysterious canyon in the Limitless Palace. It's truly amazing. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed in her heart. No wonder Limitless Palace was able to become one of the 10 great sects in such a short period of time. Sure enough, they had a special background and methods. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked into the canyon, allowing the hurricane to blow on her body. The elemental energy of level 2 Green Realm was constantly decreasing. Moreover, this hurricane was very strong. Even if a cultivator wanted to move forward with this hurricane, it would take a lot of effort. Not only that, after Bailey Hongzhuang carefully probed, she discovered that elemental energy was completely unusable in this wind ravine. As long as he used his elemental energy, the elemental energy in his body would be consumed at a much faster rate. Furthermore, the elemental energy would not be of any use. Therefore, they could only rely on their own physical strength to resist the hurricane. Chapter 1862. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang heard Su Heshuan say that she only needed to stay at the red line for 4 hours to complete the assessment. She felt that this was not an extremely difficult task. However, as Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the Wind Canyon, she felt that the hurricane was getting stronger and stronger and the Yuan Li in her body was rapidly dissipating. She then understood what Su Heshuan said. It was definitely not an easy task to stand at the red line for 4 hours. Bailey Hongzhuang walked forward. Although she had now broken through to Green Realm Level 2, she felt that the Yuan Li in her body had dissipated by more than half after she walked for less than 50 meters. This hurricane's consumption of Yuan Li is really terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang sighed faintly. The speed at which she was consuming her spiritual power was too astonishing. It was extremely difficult to stay here for 2 hours. Bailey Hongzhuang knew that to pass the Wind Canyon's assessment, it was obviously not something that could be completed in a day or two. She was afraid that it was a long-term mission that required her continuous training to have a chance of success. She carefully observed for a moment. The surrounding core disciples had obviously stayed here for a long time. However, there was not much difference between where the core disciples stayed and where she was standing now. She roughly sized them up. Through the time these cultivators stayed and the expression they revealed, she could roughly determine that the strength of these core disciples had mostly reached Green Realm Level 5. Compared to them, her strength was undoubtedly weaker and did not have any advantage. However, for such a gap in strength, Bailey Hongzhuang did not feel any disappointment in her heart. After all, these cultivators had stayed in Limitless Palace for a long time before they could become core disciples. She was just a new disciple who had just participated in the assessment competition. Compared to them, the difference in strength was only a few levels. It was already considered good. Bailey Hongzhuang could judge the strength of others through their performance. The other disciples could naturally see her strength through Bailey Hongzhuang's performance. This girl's strength should be around Green Realm level 2. I didn't expect that Palace Master and Palace Master's wife would specially send her here. It seems that her background is really powerful. You can't say that. This girl's age is only around 17 years old. To be able to have such strength already proves that her talent is extremely shocking. Among the core disciples present, there were many cultivators who were realistic. Just by looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's age to be able to have such strength, she was indeed the leader of the younger generation. Compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, their cultivation was a bit stronger, but at the same time, their age was also much older than Bailey Hongzhuang. In this way, when Bailey Hongzhuang's age was the same age as them, her cultivation would be much stronger than them. Following this cultivator's words, the surrounding core disciples' expression to be changed a bit. Just as this cultivator said, with Bailey Hongzhuang's age to have such strength, her talent was indeed very outstanding. Suddenly, the cultivators who were dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang did not know what to say at this moment. Chapter 1863. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that quite a number of core disciples had left the Wind Canyon to meditate and recover their Yuan Qi after training for a period of time. However, very few cultivators were able to stay at the Red Line for more than 4 hours. Speaking of which, the location of the Red Line was indeed miraculous. The area where the Red Line was located was undoubtedly much wider and could accommodate quite a number of cultivators. She noticed that almost all the core disciples had stopped near the Red Line. It seemed that the task that Elder Su had assigned to all of them was the same. As long as they stayed at the Red Line for 4 hours, they would be considered to have passed the Wind Canyon's test. Bailey Hongzhuang also walked towards the Red Line. When faced with the hurricane, Bailey Hongzhuang tried her best to control the Yuan Qi in her body so that it would not dissipate as quickly as possible. The hurricane grew stronger and Bailey Hongzhuang needed to expend more energy with every step she took. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had always paid attention to raising her body's quality and strength when she had been training in the past. Hence, when faced with the hurricane, Bailey Hongzhuang's movements were not affected at all. The only thing that was affected was the Yuan Qi in her body that was dissipating continuously. Bailey Hongzhuang only felt that this was indeed a good place for training. If Di Baichen knew of the existence of the Wind Canyon, he would definitely think that the Wind Canyon was extremely miraculous. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang walked forward and gradually approached the Red Line, the surrounding cultivators all revealed looks of astonishment when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. Oh my God, who is this woman? The power of this hurricane is extremely shocking. If it wasn't for multiple attempts, very few people would be able to walk this far on their first try. That's right, she had completely relied on her body's strength to walk this far. I couldn't tell that this lady was so delicate and pretty. I didn't expect her strength to be so shocking. The person that the Palace Master and Palace Mistress have brought is indeed extraordinary. If we hadn't been training in the Wind Canyon for a long enough time, we wouldn't have been able to successfully walk to the Red Line. In that moment, the crowd's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang changed. At the very least, it was rare to see a cultivator with such powerful physical strength. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't know what everyone was thinking. She only realized that when she reached the Red Line, the elemental energy in her body was depleted at an alarming rate. Not to mention 4 hours, she wouldn't even be able to last for an incense stick's worth of time. Because the consumption of the origin energy in one's body by this hurricane was truly too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but feel curious. She didn't know how to cultivate to be able to stay at the Red Line for 4 hours. Sure enough, as Bailey Hongzhuang expected, after staying at the position of the Red Line for 30 minutes, she found that the essence energy in her body was exhausted. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang did not stay in the Wind Canyon for too long. Since the elemental energy in her body had been depleted, what she should do now was to recover the elemental energy in her body as quickly as possible so that she could continue cultivating. When Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked out of the Wind Canyon, she found that the elemental energy in her body had been completely drained and there wasn't even the slightest bit left. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately took out a few energy recovery pills and consumed them. To her now, the most important thing was to increase her abilities and not cultivation resources. Chapter 1864. Initially, when they were heading towards the assessment competition, Bailey Hongzhuang had prepared quite a number of energy recovery pills. Although she had used up quite a number of them during the assessment competition, the number of Chengquan bags that they had obtained was also quite a number. Hence, she still had quite a number of energy recovery pills. Under such circumstances, using the energy recovery pills was undoubtedly the most suitable method. As long as she could quickly recover her elemental energy, she would have more time to cultivate in the Wind Canyon. Cultivating. Beside Bailey Hongzhuang, there were also quite a number of core disciples who were meditating to recover their elemental energy. From their point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang was only cultivating in the Wind Canyon for the first time, and she was already able to reach the red line position. Furthermore, she was able to reach the time it took for a joss stick to burn. This was already an extremely shocking result. In comparison, although they were able to stay at the red line position for a longer time than Bailey Hongzhuang, but when they first came to the Wind Canyon to cultivate, their results could never be compared to Bailey Hongzhuang. It was just that they were not willing to admit this point. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang eating the energy recovery pills as if they were jelly beans, the shock in their hearts became even more intense. As the core disciples of Limitless Palace, the cultivation resources that they possessed were undoubtedly much more than the ordinary disciples. The energy recovery pills were also pills that they possessed. However, none of them would waste the energy recovery pills like Bailey Hongzhuang. Every time they recovered their elemental energy, they would head to the Wind Canyon to cultivate in a short period of time before they needed to recover again. If they were to use the energy recovery pills like Bailey Hongzhuang, then the amount of energy recovery pills required in a day would definitely be an extremely shocking amount. This lady is really extravagant. She actually used the energy recovery pills to recover her elemental energy. I wonder how long she can last. A lady slowly spoke out. Her voice was filled with ridicule and jealousy. Everyone looked at each other in dismay but did not say anything. After all, in this world there were many people who were born with better conditions than them. Bailey Hongzhuang also heard the woman's words, and her eyes couldn't help but sweep over the woman. After Chewing Fei noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze on her, she was also stunned for a moment, but she quickly raised her eyebrows and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly, unwilling to let her aura weaken even a little. In her opinion, she had gone through a lot of hardships to obtain this position. This woman was so beautiful that it was obvious that she did not rely on her own abilities to obtain this position. What's wrong? Could it be that I'm not telling the truth? Chewing Fei asked. Looking at Chewing Fei's dissatisfied face, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say much. Explaining at this time was useless. When a person is prejudiced against you from the beginning, no matter how you explain, she will only see it as a cover-up. When you use your strength to prove everything, then all the rumors and slanders will disappear into nothingness. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and continued to cultivate. When Chewing Fei saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was minding her own business and ignoring her, her expression became ugly. The surrounding core disciples looked at Chewing Fei with a somewhat funny expression. Bailey Hongzhuang, this kind of person, shouldn't even bother with Chewing Fei. Feeling the gazes of the surrounding disciples, Chewing Fei's expression became even uglier. Chapter 1865. Thinking of this, Chewing Fei felt even more depressed. Her gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang was also filled with displeasure. With the help of the energy recovery pill, the yuan power in Bailey Hongzhuang's body recovered very quickly. In a short period of time, it had already recovered to its original state. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry to enter the Wind Canyon again. Instead, she was thinking about how to make her yuan power last longer in the Wind Canyon. Obviously, wanting to possess enough origin energy to persist for 4 hours under such circumstances was simply impossible. She did not know how long it would take for her to have that kind of strength. Therefore, since her master and elder Su allowed her to cultivate here, then there must be other methods that could allow her to last so long here. Therefore, rashly entering the Wind Canyon again did not have much use. Previously, she entered the Wind Canyon only to understand the characteristics of the Wind Canyon and how long she could last. Now that she had a certain understanding in her heart, she needed to figure out what she should improve here and what method she needed to use to continue persevering. After all, she was now different from the other core disciples. The others had a lot of time to improve their cultivation, but now she had to seize every second. Therefore, she had to pass the Wind Canyon's test as quickly as possible and then accept her master's other tests. Since there was only so much yuan power in her body and she wanted to last so long in the Wind Canyon, then she could only control the yuan power in her body and slow down the speed of its dissipation. That was the only way he could hold on for a longer time. After thinking carefully, Bailey Hongzhuang already understood the root of the problem. However, it was definitely not a simple thing to do to reach this step. Obviously, this required the cultivator to improve the method of controlling the yuan power in their body and use it more accurately. This kind of feeling was similar to when using a martial technique. The principle needed might only be 10%, but many cultivators who did not know how to control themselves would need to spend 20% or even more when using it. In this way, when fighting, they would suffer quite a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang also had a certain understanding of this in her previous life. Moreover, the old man in her family had also specially taught her. However, it wasn't easy to precisely control the elemental energy, and there weren't any suitable conditions to practice it. Only when cultivators used martial techniques, they would try their best to learn how to control it. She never thought that Limitless Palace actually had this kind of training method. It was really rare. After following Bailey Hongzhuang to the sect, she realized that the current sect had many advantages compared to 2 years ago. After understanding this point, Bailey Hongzhuang did not hesitate anymore. Wanting to control the yuan power in one's body was not something that could be done just thinking about it. It was only through continuous trials and practice could one achieve this goal. Bailey Hongzhuang had already prepared. Through the process of time, trials and time, she gradually grasped this method. Once again entering the Wind Canyon, Bailey Hongzhuang was not in a hurry to rush to the location of the red line. Instead, she controlled the power in her body a little bit, trying to minimize the consumption of power. Chapter 1866. Bailey Hongzhuang was an alchemist and an inscription master. Her mental strength was originally much stronger than that of ordinary cultivators. Therefore, at this moment, when her mental strength completely spread out, she could feel every subtle change in the yuanli in her body. Every time this hurricane blew on her body, it would take away the yuanli in her body through her pores. When Bailey Hongzhuang discovered this, she thought of ways to seal her pores to reduce the dissipation of the yuanli. However, even though Bailey Hongzhuang thought of ways to seal her pores, the yuanli was still in the process of dissipating. However, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that in this way, the speed of dissipation of the yuanli was indeed much slower than before. Bailey Hongzhuang's method of sealing her pores was to spread her yuanli all over the surface of her body to prevent the hurricane from taking away the yuanli in her body. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly moved forward, feeling every change in detail and thinking of ways to prevent the dissipation of the yuanli in her body. In the process of sensing, her understanding of the yuanli was constantly improving. Just like this, Bailey Hongzhuang continuously improved her control and understanding of the yuanli. However, in the eyes of the other core disciples, Bailey Hongzhuang's behavior was really strange. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang tried for the first time, she had already successfully walked to the position of the red line. However, in this second attempt, Bailey Hongzhuang moved forward at an extremely slow speed. This action made the crowd somewhat suspicious. They did not understand what exactly Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. They had already cultivated in Wind Canyon for a very long time, but they were still unable to withstand the consumption of the yuanli in this hurricane. Therefore, they could only continuously consume their yuanli and meditate to recover. In this process, they raised their own cultivation. What exactly is this girl doing? Why can't I understand what she is doing? A male cultivator had a puzzled expression. He had been observing Bailey Hongzhuang for a while, but from beginning to end, he did not understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. However, according to his judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely doing something because Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with a trace of pondering. I don't know. The cultivator beside him shook his head. He also did not understand what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at Wind Canyon, she had not said anything. She only minded her own business and experienced everything here. However, this did not change everyone's curiosity towards her. What else could she be doing? She is just deliberately mystifying things. Chewing Face was filled with dissatisfaction and disdain. From her point of view, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions was deliberately mystifying things. She wanted to use this method to show that she was different from others and attract everyone's attention. Before, Bailey Hongzhuang had ignored her, which made her very unhappy. Therefore, at this moment, when Chewing Face said these words, she deliberately raised her voice so that Bailey Hongzhuang could hear her. Since Bailey Hongzhuang made her lose face in front of everyone, then she would not let Bailey Hongzhuang be happy. Moreover, according to her judgment, if Bailey Hongzhuang was really an extraordinary person, then the palace master and the palace master's wife would definitely introduce her. However, the palace master only asked Elder Su to teach Bailey Hongzhuang cultivation. Her treatment was not much different from theirs. Chapter 1867. After thinking about this, Chewing Fei increasingly felt that her judgment was correct. Therefore, her gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang was filled with even more unhappiness. Any cultivator would not have a good impression of someone who got in through the back door. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude was so arrogant. Bailey Hongzhuang did not understand. She did not even say a word to Chewing Fei, but Chewing Fei actually had so many opinions towards her. However, she did not care. No matter what opinions Chewing Fei had, she would just let her be. Any cultivator who did not work hard enough in cultivation would always look for other reasons when they saw other outstanding cultivators. After some cultivators heard Chewing Fei's sarcastic words, their expressions changed a little. In fact, although they were full of curiosity about Bailey Hongzhuang's identity and suspected that Bailey Hongzhuang got in through the back door, after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's true strength, their original thoughts had dissipated a lot. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang herself had such strength. Now Chewing Fei was targeting Bailey Hongzhuang everywhere. It was undoubtedly very impolite. Chewing Fei, watch your words. At this moment, a man stood out and looked at Chewing Fei and said. Seeing that someone actually stood up for Bailey Hongzhuang, Chewing Fei's expression suddenly became ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang was just an outsider. Chewing Fei thought that she said such words to stand up for everyone. However, now, someone actually spoke about her for Bailey Hongzhuang. This was really intolerable. Pei Yifan, what do you mean by this? Chewing Fei's face was full of dissatisfaction. She looked at Pei Yifan indignantly. She did not understand why Pei Yifan would stand on Bailey Hongzhuang's side at this time. I don't mean anything. I just hope that you can watch your words when you speak. Since we are all in Wuji Palace, then we should get along well and not speak ill of each other. Pei Yifan's words were very fair. He did not know what kind of person Bailey Hongzhuang was, but Bailey Hongzhuang's current performance was enough to prove her ability. In this world, the treatment of geniuses was often different from ordinary people. However, when Pei Yifan's words fell into Chewing Fei's ears, it became dissatisfaction and reprimand towards her. Chewing Fei's face instantly turned red. She looked at Pei Yifan with eyes full of anger. Chewing Fei's gaze fell on Bailey Hongzhuang. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's face, she could not help but have a mocking smile on her face. Pei Yifan, Chewing Fei's eyes in Fei's words. Chewing Fei's eyes were filled with mockery as she looked at Pei Yifan with disdain. Even if you stand up for her, why don't you take a look at yourself? She doesn't even like you. Don't think too highly of yourself. You will only make a joke out of yourself. Chewing Fei's words were sharp and unpleasant. She was not polite at all. After hearing Chewing Fei's words, the surrounding disciples could not help but frown. Chapter 1868. Just like now, standing up for Bailey Hongzhuang was something that Pei Yifan often did. But now, after Chewing Fei said these words, it was a completely different feeling. This was completely slandering Pei Yifan. Some of Pei Yifan's friends who had a good relationship with him couldn't help but have ugly expressions after hearing Chewing Fei's slander of Pei Yifan. Chewing Fei, what nonsense are you talking about? Pei Yifan straightened his face. He didn't have any improper thoughts about Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Chewing Fei's words were like a groundless accusation. How am I talking nonsense? If you didn't have such thoughts, why would you stand up for a cultivator who came through the back door? Chewing Fei didn't believe what Pei Yifan said at all. In her opinion, other than this reason, Pei Yifan had no other reason to stand up for Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang originally didn't plan to pay attention to Chewing Fei. A woman like her who wanted to see the world in chaos was extremely jealous. No matter how she argued, Chewing Fei would definitely pester her endlessly. It was just a waste of her time. She didn't expect that another cultivator would stand up for her at this time. It was really beyond her expectations. After seeing Pei Yifan's clear black eyes, she understood that Pei Yifan didn't have any other thoughts about her. It was just that he was very upright. It was just that Chewing Fei was looking for trouble with her, but now she was even slandering Pei Yifan. This was something that Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't tolerate. Through the back door. When Chewing Fei said the words through the back door, the expressions of the cultivators present changed a little. They also had the same guess about Bailey Hongzhuang in their hearts, but none of them would say it out loud. They didn't expect Chewing Fei to say these words so directly. Wasn't she trying to expand the conflict between her and Bailey Hongzhuang to the maximum? Everyone's gaze couldn't help but shift to Bailey Hongzhuang. They wanted to know how Bailey Hongzhuang would react after hearing Chewing Fei say such words. Chewing Fei also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang proudly. Just this point alone was something Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't explain at all. Looking at Chewing Fei's proud look, Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly curled into a mocking smile. Her red lips slightly opened. So what if I came through the back door? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the expressions of the cultivators present changed. In their opinion, Bailey Hongzhuang would find a way to explain herself. No one thought Chewing Fei. Ingfei Hongzhuang's words. Chu Aifei was. Chewing Fei was also dumbfounded at this moment. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's overbearing appearance, she only felt that it was inconceivable. Obviously, going through the back door was something that couldn't be brought up in public, but Bailey Hongzhuang could still say it so matter-of-factly. Over the years, Bailey Hongzhuang had encountered many opponents. Among them there were also many people who were sharp-tongued. Therefore, she knew how to deal with these cultivators who were intoxicated by their success and make them speechless. Chapter 1869. Bailey Hongzhuang's indifferent and disdainful gaze swept across Chewing Fei's face. Her voice was light and cold. If you have the ability, then go through the back door. If you don't have the ability, then stop talking nonsense. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were concise and comprehensive, but they were filled with incomparable arrogance. In reality, she did indeed go through the back door to come here and cultivate with the core disciples. However, she also paid an endless price to obtain the qualifications she had today. Comparatively speaking, the test she passed was much better than the other core disciples. Therefore, standing here cultivating, she only felt that she had a clear conscience. Chewing Fei's face flushed red. She angrily looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. She opened her mouth but couldn't say a single word to refute. Because everything Bailey Hongzhuang said was simply irrefutable. Indeed, in her heart, she was jealous that Bailey Hongzhuang could enjoy such treatment. However, she was very clear that with her background, it was impossible for her to accomplish all of this. The atmosphere became strange in an instant. Everyone's gaze constantly looked back and forth between Bailey Hongzhuang and Chewing Fei. However, it was clear that in this contest, Bailey Hongzhuang had the absolute upper hand. At that time, it was the first time I saw someone go through the back door so naturally. I really didn't expect that your skin would be so thick. Chewing Fei angrily shouted and cursed Bailey Hongzhuang. Although I don't know what the ranking of the core disciples is, just by looking at your meddling and jealous appearance, I can determine that your strength is definitely at the bottom of the core disciples. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chewing Fei with ridicule. Her words were even more merciless. It was impolite not to reciprocate. Since Chewing Fei liked to stir up trouble, then she naturally wouldn't let Chewing Fei have it easy. When Bailey Hongzhuang said these words, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a bit of surprise. This was because Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment was not wrong at all. Chewing Fei's strength was indeed the weakest among them. Just by looking at the gazes of the surrounding cultivators, Bailey Hongzhuang was certain that her judgment was not wrong. She could not help but curl her lips into a mocking smile. Instead of using your mind to meddle in other people's business, why don't you put your mind on cultivation? Otherwise, you will only be jealous of others forever. In this world, there had always been many cultivators who blamed the heavens and blamed others. They were jealous of the talent and strength of others, but they never thought of working hard themselves. Instead, they put all their thoughts on slandering and envying others. Clearly, Chewing Fei was such a cultivator. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words that hit the nail on the head, Chewing Fei's face couldn't hold it any longer. She only felt that the way everyone looked at her changed a bit, as if she had become a joke in an instant. Don't go too far. Chewing Fei's face was ferocious. She looked as if she wanted to kill Bailey Hongzhuang immediately. Here, the person with the weakest strength is you. Seeing Chewing Fei's angry appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang was still indifferent. Her calm eyes didn't have the slightest fluctuation. Clearly, Chewing Fei's threat had no effect on her. What? You're the one who's been causing trouble for me, but now you're not letting me say anything. Who do you think you are? Chapter 1870. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Chewing Fei provocatively. Ever since she came, Chewing Fei had been looking for trouble with her. Now even Pei Yifan was involved. If she didn't express her stance, Chewing Fei would only become more and more intense. In terms of eloquence, she didn't lose to anyone. Bailey Hongzhuang's words made Chewing Fei speechless. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang, who had been holding back before, would open her mouth so sharply. She didn't even give her a chance to refute. Feeling everyone's constantly changing gazes, Chewing Fei couldn't help but feel anxious. She originally wanted to teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson in front of everyone, but she didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to be so powerful. If she didn't think of a way to turn the tables, today's matter would really become a joke in everyone's eyes. In the future, she wouldn't be able to raise her head when facing Bailey Hongzhuang. This was definitely something she didn't want to see. You're a new disciple of Limitless Palace. Now, in front of everyone, you actually dare to insult your senior sister. Don't you know how to be polite? When Chewing Fei said these words, not to mention Bailey Hongzhuang, the surrounding cultivators looked at her as if they were looking at a joke. Previously, it was clearly Chewing Fei who was targeting Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, Bailey Hongzhuang just refuted a few words, and Chewing Fei put on the airs of a senior sister. This was a bit too shameless. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled and looked at Chewing Fei mockingly. I've seen shameless people, but I've never seen someone as shameless as you. Bailey Hongzhuang thought that she had seen a lot of scum, but it was rare to see someone as shameless as Chewing Fei. After Bailey Hongzhuang said this, everyone's eyes changed a bit, but in their hearts, they felt that Bailey Hongzhuang's words were very reasonable. Wasn't Chewing Fei's current actions shameless? The way Pei Yifan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gradually changed. Previously, when he heard Chewing Fei mocking Bailey Hongzhuang remained unmoved and never defended herself. He only felt that Chewing Fei's bullying of Bailey Hongzhuang was too much, so he stood out to say a few words. However, now it seemed that Bailey Hongzhuang was definitely not afraid of Chewing Fei. She just disdained to talk to Chewing Fei. Now that Hongzhuang had suddenly stood out, there was only one reason for him to do so, because of him. Other than that, there was no other reason. Facing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Pei Yifan's mood was very complicated. Now it seemed that the cultivators brought by the palace master and madam were indeed extraordinary. At least, Bailey Hongzhuang's temperament was not comparable to ordinary people. Chewing Fei's expression was extremely ugly. Bailey Hongzhuang actually dared to call her shameless in public? You dare to call me shameless? Chu Yunfei's voice was sharp, and his face was ferocious and ugly. That angry look was as if he couldn't wait to rush up and tear Bailey Hongzhuang apart in the next moment. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was still calm, and was not moved by Chewing Fei's anger at all. You did such a thing yourself, are you still afraid of me talking about it? Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes slightly raised, and her beautiful face was filled with disdain. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.